To really explore a city, you've got to know its artists. It's the artistic underground, the creative backbone that really makes a place come alive. See what's being created, as it's created, where it's created. Because good things are created here. Newport, Rhode Island is an exciting and surprising place. A tiny and well-loved dot on the New England coastline, Newport is most commonly thought of as a longtime summer residence for the New York City and Philadelphia elite. A place of leisurely beach hangouts, sailing races, and seafood. However, that's not the only version of Newport that exists. The town is also home to Rhode Island School of Design graduates, longtime residents, sailors, dreamers, and builders of all types. It's a hidden gem when it comes to artistic talent. Art forms like scrimshaw, illustrations carved into reclaimed whale bones, glass blowing, which requires speed, and boat building using turn-of-the-century techniques. What is also little known is that Newport is a city filled with professional healers. Trained herbalists, doulas, and yogis are all drawn to the natural beauty of the island and the soulful oceanside life. In that spirit, I started the day at Gather, the local apothecary. It's a friendly hangout, family chill space, and yummy tea shop. My goal in stopping by? To get a morning pick-me-up, and I got it. Sarah Berkman, a third-generation Newport resident who runs the shop, whipped me up a special drink. A coconut-milled cold brew with tea instead of coffee, all made with locally foraged ingredients. After getting grounded in the morning, I headed to Washington Square Park to visit the Newport Ballet, also known as the Island Moving Company. Island Moving Co. is not a traditional ballet company. They combine contemporary moves, soaring music, and a classical ballet style. And they perform not just in traditional theaters, but in site-specific locations. In Newport, that means staging Peter Pan on the mast of a massive historical sailboat and performing in the gardens of Gilded Age mansions that Newport has become synonymous with. I spoke with Mickey Olson, IMC's artistic director, all about their programming.
Island Moving Company, we move people, bodies, hearts, and minds.
That's so beautiful, and I know from having seen the company perform that you do so many styles of dance, jazz and hip-hop and classical ballet.
We do, and in 1982, when we all came together with our strong classical backgrounds and we were looking for our own voices in movement, we took all of our training from all of the different genres and tried to find new ways of moving. And back then people used to say to us, well, so who are you? What are you? You're not neoclassical, you're not jazz, you're not modern. And the word contemporary had not yet been formed. And it was a real problem for us initially to be able to describe who we are. And now, 30 years later, there's this fabulous vocabulary of contemporary dance, but it all came from this melding together of all of these styles.
You often use Newport as a backdrop for these stunning performances. Why is that?
I believe dance has to become experiential in order for it to survive. And we have created this Nutcracker, and it is critically acclaimed by the New York Times. It's 90 people follow the dance through the mansion. It's just amazing. And then the second act is in the ballroom where people are seated watching classical ballet in a way that it was meant to be seen since the 1600s. We've also used Belcourt Castle for our Dracula, Seaview Terrace, which was the original home in Dark Shadows film, also for Dracula. So we tend to use our environment here because it's just so stunning, and there's nothing like seeing dance like that.
Glenn Lewis and Tara Gregg are two of the principal dancers for the company. They told me about what it takes to do this year-round. Tara, you have performed as an aerial dancer at the Lyric Opera of Chicago. Have you exercised any of those aerial techniques here at IMC?
They're performing in these site-specific venues. You do have to change sort of your scope, you know, like being an aerialist at the Lyric Opera, like looking 50 feet above these thousands of seats. That's a different sort of energy than you would use when somebody's sitting right next to you and you're performing a very moving duet or solo or something. So just playing with the sense of scale has been really fun because we get to do, you know,
as
big
close
and
as you
small
are,
and everything in between.
As close as you are to us, that's our audience perspective.
A lot of time.
And usually in a theater you sort of have like this fifth wall, as we say, was sort of this dark abyss, and you can like really cry to the audience, but you're really looking to someone's eyes and doing it. So that's also something that I knew I had to get used to when performing with IMC.
I think as artists, that's a really phenomenal growth opportunity as the audience, right? As the viewer, that just makes the performance even more fantastic.
And I think that's why people love seeing us, especially when we do something like Nutcracker, where the kids can sit right down on the ground and look up to these characters, and the audience are really involved in the story by sitting in a grand ballroom. And as you said, to really draw you in.
All about making the arts more accessible, and if they're literally more accessible because you're sitting right there, you know, that's one way to do it.
What does your practice schedule look like?
We rehearse throughout the year per production, and when we are in season, as we call it, when we're getting ready for a show that's coming up, we'll rehearse Monday through Friday from 9 to 3. So we start our day with a morning ballet class. That's every day. That's how we maintain our technique. And then for the rest of the day, we will rehearse the pieces or the dances that we're going to be performing. So that's, since we're a small company, there's only 10 or 11 of us at a time. We're all kind of dancing all day.
Every time I watch Dirty Dancing, I've got to know, how do you do those lifts?
It's just really this sort of figuring out each other's bodies, figuring out each other's hand grip, figuring out each other's timing, plies, the bending of the knees to go up in the air, or even to turn someone. Here at Island Moving Company, we partner everyone. So we're not just with one girl that we can really know their bodies, but we have to know all the girls' bodies. And it's also men lifting men, girls lifting girls, and we just all uplift each other.
Well, what's nice is with a company this size, you know, there's an intimacy, there's a scale that allows you to get to know one another on that level. I also watched the Island Moving Company in action, practicing for their annual performance at one of the local mansions, Bellevue House. Their performance was as beautiful as the day and the saltwater pool in which they performed. Water, in all forms, plays a big role in life here, and boats, in this town, are a staple. The art of boat building is a singular and special one, requiring technical training, great focus, and a knowledge of far more than just woodworking. While many might call it a craft, the beauty of a sailboat comes from the care, precision, and skill that goes into making it. And that qualifies as art in my book. To learn how that's done, I went to one of the few places in the world where you can see old-style sailboat building in action, IRIS, the International Yacht Restoration School, right here in Newport. Newport is a seasonal town, and what is most notable about the place from an artistic perspective is the way that seasonality affects the artistic landscape. There is a lot to see here in the summer when most of the tourists currently visit. Water sports, beautiful homes, gorgeous galleries and boutiques filled with the works from local artists, all in the rich color palette of Newport. Namely, the colors of the sea, sunshine, and sky. What most people don't realize, though, is that the art scene here is actually born in the winter. A tip for anyone who wants to discover great artwork before the crowds. In the winter, the singers, bands, and poets perform at places like Parlor and PJ's. The visual artists are having collaborative workshops, budding an amazing body of work. I talked with Newport art historian Tracy Johnson about seasonality in the art scene and building year-round art tourism. I also spoke with her about the work she's doing with Newport Art House, including a documentary-style tribute to the town itself. I think you're really humble in describing yourself as an artist. You're so much more than an artist. You are a musician, a community member, and maybe most notably, the director of the Newport Art House, which does what?
Newport Art House is a nonprofit organization founded in 2015 with a mission to nurture, showcase, and promote the contemporary arts in Newport County. I saw an opportunity to create something that would tie together our great architectural heritage here, the enormous amount of empty structures that are here in the wintertime, the nonprofit need for engagement that's really prevalent, especially here in Newport, I feel, and of course an arts community that's really ready, willing, and able to share their work in a really interesting and beautiful way. So Newport Art House was born out of a real strong urge to tie all those awesome things together.
Tell me about some of the Newport Art House programming.
Rewind is a multimedia and multimodal art event where we oftentimes have music, visual art, performance art, and dance, all in one space. There's a great community ranging from emerging to completely established artists, nonprofit representatives, city employees that come out to Rewind. And I think that's really been one of our events that have brought out the greatest spectrum of community members.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head, and that is that the artists actually fuel the economy in the wintertime here.
I think artists fuel the economy year-round. It's very difficult to find a workforce that's willing to live in Newport year-round. And honestly, those people are going to be the types of folks that are interested in risk-taking, which is a very, not stereotypically associated trait with artists, but it is something that we do. We move into neighborhoods that don't have investment. We invest sweat equity, we rebuild, we visualize, we revolutionize.
In Newport, the city demographics are changing. What is your perspective on how the arts can help?
There's this interesting push to attract creatives because creatives are known to be folks that are making a little bit more money and who actually support the arts community. What the city isn't thinking about is that you have to have an authentic arts community to attract the creatives. So I think it's a very fascinating time to be here and to push the city to focus on investing on its arts community as it itself pushes towards better economic situation, more young people, and more population in general. So I think the arts sit right in the middle of all of those interesting problems, and the solution is right here.
An expert on the history of Newport's public art and architecture, Tracy also gave me a tour of a few notable places in town. As she showed me, the first people who came to Newport were seeking religious freedom. Then it was the artists. As in many places, artists were first to arrive and build buzz about the town. In this case, it was the luminous, naturalist, and romantic painters, and architects who were inspired by the shingles on all of the old barns here. As Tracy mentioned, Newport is propelled by summer tourism, but it is anchored by artists, sailors, and good people who run small businesses all over town all year round. This is a town where poets turn singer-songwriters, and everyone knows or knows of almost everyone else. Mallory Day is one of those people. She is a beloved musician and poet in Newport. Her previous musical projects, Town Man Charged and then Wildlife, have evolved from bluegrass and rock and roll. Now, with her breakout solo career and EP release, she has progressed from her earlier influences to craft her own body of work, one that is inspired by her own experience, tying themes of spirituality and her knowledge of psychology. She's a professional therapist, to tell her story. Your music comes from a place of authenticity and raw emotion. Can you tell me about some of the loves and dreams and joyful songs specifically that have come out of that?
My dream is to express myself as authentically as I possibly can, and being able to notice what barriers and what's getting in my way and being able to work through them. Speaking of joys, it takes a lot of, at least it took a lot of work for me to work through the darker parts of myself that have come out in my music in the past, and even currently to be able to hold space for the joy that comes out. I don't simply just land in this place of joy. It's taken a lot of work for me to get there and be able to find the strength and bravery to be able to let it out and to share with other people.
How do you write lyrics in a way that ultimately lifts people up, and how do you know what to share?
At least with this latest album that I just released, a lot of it I'm kind of writing to myself. Things that I want to remind myself of. Kind of a map to self-love in a way. A lot of it's addressing like the path that I've been trying to take to get to that place of self-love. I have a song about, it's called Shadow, about addressing the shadow sides of yourself and remembering how important that is. So it's kind of like singing it to myself and also sharing that knowledge with everyone else and encouraging people to do their own work, of course, if they're ready for it, but at least this is how it's been for me. It's been really rewarding.
In addressing your shadow side and some of your deeper emotions, I know that you have gone on some spiritual journeys, one of which recently influenced the latest album, New Growth. Will you tell me about that?
Well, one thing that stands out for me the most is how I was able to tap in to a deeper sense of power. The amount of fear that came up around going on this journey of the plant medicine, it kind of tapped into every fear within myself, every doubt, every just kind of what if. And the fact that I was able to step up and go there, it made me feel so empowered. And I realized I had such an awakening that once you face your fear, you step into it, you lean into it, there's so much beauty on the other side of that, like so much. And that, I came back from that trip and immediately put this album into works. And I actually decided to invest time and money into it rather than I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll record it in my friend's basement or something, but that wasn't feeling right. I was like, I'm gonna pay for studio time. I'm gonna make this happen in a way that really reaches its potential. And I don't think I would have done that before. I think that there's something that I accessed inside myself that wasn't there before. It's really beautiful.
Well, you know what fear stands for? Fuck everything and run, or face everything and rise, and you clearly did the latter.
You know, I've never heard that before, and I love it. That is amazing. Yeah, and you know, it's taught me so much in my work too. As a therapist, I specialize in treating anxiety too, and among other things. But being able to bring that knowledge to my clients is so powerful, to help them face their fears too. And I think that's where the work starts inside yourself, and then you spread it around.
Your album is called New Growth. What does that mean to you?
Thinking back to my evolution as a musician and as a performer, I've gone through a lot of phases. A year ago, I was working on a project called Wildlife, where I was in a rock and roll band and I was screaming and I was emoting this anger and working through a bitter heartache. But this album is so evolved from that. It's the step forward, the step towards myself, towards healing. So when I think of the way that plants grow, and I love plants, and especially the springtime walking around Newport's amazing. I see the flowers growing, and every time I see new growth in my houseplants or on the street when I'm walking by, I always point it out, and I'm like, oh look, it's adorable. It's new growth, and like it came into my mind, like I'm feeling that way within myself too.
You're such a powerful lyricist. What is the songwriting process like for you?
For me, it always starts with a feeling. And I've been a poet since I was younger, before I was a songwriter. So I tend to start with writing song lyrics or writing poetry and seeing if it wants to come out in some kind of form that would be perfect for a song. And then what tends to happen is I'll pick up the guitar, I'll start strumming something, and the melody just comes to me. And oftentimes I finish a song in one sitting.
I also got a special treat. She read me one of her poems.
This year we skipped winter. The crows never left, they just lingered, waiting patiently for the sun to return. I lit a cigarette and smiled. and wondered if the snow will ever come. The cawing reminds me of my childhood. Cool open spaces and cloudy skies, beckoning me to explore, to take in nature, to feel independent, to know I'll return to a warm home in the space between seasons.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
I ended the night at Parasolato watching local band the Z-Boys play. That's what people do here. Gather. They live, laugh, and love. It's a small town and an authentic community. It's also a fun place to dance away a Wednesday night.
My heart like a fox on tonight. What a day, Josephina. We're strolling down to the ghetto line.
Pulling back the veil on what many perceive to be a vacation town reveals the heart that can be found here year-round. And while the tourists currently only come here for a few months out of the year, the locals rally together over salty beach days, moonlit nights, and swaying surf rock sounds at resident music venues. In this small corner of New England, there's a convergence of skills, creativity, and craft. It's a place where the seasons can be felt, dedication can be found, and creative life flourishes, whatever the weather outside.